Like the fire, feel the beat. Gday Gridiron can't be beat. Nick your knee and bring the heat. Brad's the MVP elite. From the outback through the field, we got tackles hard to steal. Catch the passes, make it real. Gridiron warriors never kneel. G'day Gridiron, down under and beyond. G'day Gridiron, yeah, the podcast come on strong.
G'day Aussie Gridiron fans, and welcome to the G'day Gridiron podcast, brought to you by the Aussie Gridiron Network, Australia's home of NFL and local gridiron content. It is the second half of the regular season for 2024. Week 10, right at the beginning. We're after the trade deadline, so all of the fun stuff begins from here till the end of January, when we get through the end of the postseason and towards that elusive Super Bowl for some teams like Vikings or Cowboys fans. All right, the boys are back for another preview show for Week 10, of course, where we do some game previews, our bloody best bets, and tonight we actually have a bit of a recap on some trade deadline stuff from Wednesday. You would have heard Isaac and I talk about a little bit of stuff earlier in the week, but there's a few more that went down overnight right on the deadline, right near the buzzer. So we get a couple little reactions to those as well. Nick, you had the bye week, so you got to sit back and watch some football this week. What games did you enjoy not having to worry about and feel like the world was going to collapse on you after?
I'll tell you what I did enjoy. No injuries this week. First time this year, no injuries.
Positives.
It's taking us to not play a game. Look, there was. I because the time zone had changed in America now, so the games have sort of been brought forward. So those first set of games start at 4:30 here in SA. So had a bit of red zone on. Then had a look at sort of that Miami Buffalo game, and then sort of in the later windows was where some of my picks sort of came into it. So sort of went back to red zone and had a look at all of it. But yeah, it was just good to have a look at all of those sort of games all at once. And it's good when your teams. I suppose it's good when you have the bye, because then you just watch everyone and you've got no emotional attachments besides your money stakes and then your fantasy teams, which still get you pissed off. So I suppose that you still get into it like a normal week. It's just same but different.
Yeah, you just don't feel like death when your team loses. Like that's all it is. Brad is. We record here at night time. Brad, we're lucky Brad's awake tonight because Brad had a marathon recording session with the boys from the Aussie NFL Fantasy yesterday. And, of course, if you do listen to all the shows in the AGN feed, you would have heard Brad on yesterday's show, the first of the weekend for the Aussie NFL Fantasy show. And I assume you'll hear him for Sunday's show if he can wake up for that. Brad, I assume you had a good night until the wee hours of the morning.
I had a great night, and it's a good price to pay. So it was definitely worth it. I'm glad I could. Those boys are the gold standard when it comes to fantasy football. So I encourage all our listeners to give them a listen, because they really know what they're talking about, and it's always a lot of fun hanging out with them and just having a good time. In the meantime, I am sweating like a pig on a treadmill up here in Queensland. So. It's hot. I've got no AC where I'm at, so I'm. You'll forgive me if I all of a sudden break out in a STD rash or something.
The boys definitely are the gold standard, and I'll tell you what, Brad, that's not blowing smoke up their asses either. There's some American fantasy football podcasts which are very boring, and they're 2 hours long, and you listen to them, you're like, how have you gone for this long without entertainment? Like, seriously, provide me with entertainment. But Taylor and Maddie do an amazing job at bringing the entertainment and the fun and a lot of Aussie to the fantasy football realm. And if you never listened to that and suddenly you're listening to this, I don't know how, honestly, because they're the draw card for our network, really. But make sure you delve deep into the Aussie NFL fantasy show and give those boys a really decent listen. I'm pretty sure just about anyone will like what they've got to say. All right, boys, let's do some trade deadline recap. There wasn't a great deal. Only 8 trades all up in those final hours on early Wednesday morning, Australian time. Of course, the whole deadline ended at 4 p.m. Tuesday American, which is 8 a.m. in the eastern states of Australia on Wednesday morning. So we get to wake up to everything that's already happened and maybe a couple at the end. So there's only a few to go through.
Only few. I remember when the trade deadline, you had one, maybe 2 trades at the trade deadline.
Well, Brad, every other one that I've been involved in since I've been an NFL fan has been huge, even down to last year. Ridiculous. 2020, off the chain when it shouldn't have been. But yeah, like last year, I think Medjot and I were trying to figure out how we were going to cover it all.
Do with everything.
Yeah, because we were doing everything at once, and they were all popping off right at like 7:30 to 7:50, like in the morning, and it was just like wow. And I remember texting because I was at work, pre morning meetings and stuff, and then all these trades keep popping up as notifications from Twitter, and I'm like, oh wow this, oh wow this, oh wow this, and yeah, this year it was just woke up and the boys have said this happened, and Mike Williams to the Steelers, as we were just about to talk about, and then that's it. It's just like, all right, cool, that's it. I guess I'll go to work and just be a deadbeat all day. So like it's right. No, nothing interesting is going to happen in my life today, apparently. All right, so as I just said, Mike Williams to the Steelers. Jets get a 2025 fifth-round pick back for Mike Williams. Pretty good little depth wide receiver. Of course, the writing was on the wall for Williams once the Jets brought in Devontae Adams. It was kind of just assumed that both player and organisation knew that he was just going to get moved on. But Williams to the Steelers, not such a bad move considering Russell Wilson is there, and I guess he feels like he might mesh with the Russell Wilson era at the Steelers a little bit better.
Yeah, I think so. Can't get any worse than how he was meshing with the Jets, and I think it was over when Aaron Rodgers called him out for running a wrong route publicly. When a quarterback does that to your receiver, then there's some problems there. So I think it's a great move. It's great for Mike. It's great for the Steelers. The Jets get something back for him. So it's a win-win-win in my opinion, and we'll see how he fits in the system. But just to your point, Ian, I think the way Russ is playing these last couple of weeks might make their offense kind of sneaky good.
That'll be a good pickup. And still on the Steelers, defensive end Preston Smith. Sorry, did you want to go? Do you go something there, Nick?
I was going to say if he stays healthy, he's always injured. But yeah.
Are you talking about Russ or Williams?
Oh, Williams.
it's
Russ is a lot more durable, but given his age, but definitely Williams is the one that's more concerned about.
Yeah. So still on the Steelers, defensive end Preston Smith gets traded to the Steelers as well. They've picked him up and sent Green Bay back a 2025 7th round pick. So the Steelers adding on both sides of the ball, get a pretty decent defensive end as some backup there. Of course, Smith is 31 years old, so he's sort of getting on in the league a bit more. Hasn't had a lot to do this year, though. Played a lot. Well, he's played a lot of snaps, but not a lot happening. Only a few tackles. I think he's up to 19 combined, 13 assists, a couple of sacks for this year. But overall, in his career since 2015, he is a man with 68.5 sacks to his name. So could be a good little pickup there for their defense too.
and
Yeah,
only for a seventh rounder.
yeah, exactly. For and it's this is a case where the Green Bay, they have a lot of depth on that D line, and he just wasn't getting a lot of reps. He wasn't going to fit into their future. And the Steelers need depth big time. Watt is playing great, along with I forget the other guy's name, who's taking the majority of the snaps. They can't get off the field, so by bringing in Smith, they're going to be able to rotate him and hopefully keep those guys healthy, because that run defense for the Steelers is legitimate. I just wonder if they can keep it up. Because Watt is no Max Crosby. He seems to be a little bit more injury prone. So I think it's a great move.
Yeah, for sure. And he, interesting enough, he was one of the older players at 31 on the Green Bay, in the whole Green Bay team, to be honest, not just on their defense. And the word that came out later, I think on Thursday, was that he'd actually requested the trade after feeling like he didn't fit in to their scheme change anymore, and wanted to move on somewhere that would maybe suit him a little bit better. This seems like it will. It's a Mike Tomlin-led defense, so you would have to think that that's the way it's going to be. Staying with the defensive ends, Zadarius Smith gets traded to the Detroit Lions, who just get better and better. The Lions sent the Browns a 2025 fifth and a 2025 sixth rounder, and also the Lions also picked up a 2026 seventh rounder, so a couple of pick swaps there, 6th to 7th, and a 5th rounder as well. Doesn't seem like a lot for a guy with a lot of upside and especially a lot of point to prove in the NFC North.
Yeah, I mean, the Lions, I feel like the Lions just had to do something. And Smith is as good as what they can get. It'll be interesting, though, because he's been playing the majority of the snaps at like almost D tackle, not at edge, which is what they need. But I think from what I've heard, the plan is to kind of rotate him around at defensive end, defensive tackle, and it'll just free up some of the other guys to also be rotation. So I think they're just going to be a little bit more creative in how they use them. For the Lions, they needed to do something. Like I said, they went out and did it, and they didn't have to sell the roster or pay any huge price. So I get it, and it makes them better. So why not?
It's a pretty good deal. Only for a few late round swaps. And like we said, considering Hutchinson is gone, he's going to be able to open up a lot more at that DN spot. I was quite confused as to why they had sort of favoured him more as a DT this year, the Browns. But now playing back out on the edge, there might be a bit of a bump with him, depending on how it goes. But definitely something that they needed.
Yeah,
And I was just say
the DT thing's probably more about not knowing really how to use his skill set.
Yeah,
To its efficiency.
It could have been health of the team and whatever. And he's in contract through 25, so that's also
they pick him up for 2 years, Brad.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a pretty good deal for a couple of late round picks.
And he's not on an exorbitant salary, I don't think. So yeah.
If you go back to the last few years where he was both healthy and playing at DE, of course, with the Vikings, he had a 10-sack year. In Green Bay in 2020, he had 12.5, 2019, 13.5. So you put him at defensive end, he's going to eat, especially in the way that defense was built, I guess, for Hutchinson in a way. So if they play him in that similar role, he's not going to be as explosive as what Hutch is because the kid's just younger. But the experience might help a great deal there. The funny part about it was going to the NFC North is that they also still have games against both Green Bay and the Vikings, who he will have a little bit of point to prove. Of course, Green Bay is a point to prove where they basically wouldn't. they didn't want him there. Essentially, I think that's what it boiled down to.
Yep.
And there was the contract and money dispute with the Vikings after that 1 year when he ended up leaving to go to the Browns. So those games should be interesting because Za'Darius definitely likes to play with a chip on his shoulder.
As an aside, I'm just kind of curious, or I thought it was interesting, the Browns didn't try and unload more guys just because they're coming up against that massive Watson salary cap hit. So where they're going to have like $73 million for 2 years in a row, which is just unreal. So I don't know how they're going to navigate that. So I was a little surprised the Browns weren't more sellers, considering they're not going anywhere. They're not doing anything this season.
Depends on who they would have gotten rid of, though. I suppose. Would you be dealing a guy like Myles Garrett? Is that probably too far?
Well, no, I don't think it is, to be honest with you, because you know your poo. You know you need draft picks, and he's your best asset. So deal him. You think about it. You know that's what a lot of teams have done. They've been successful with it. So I personally just don't get it. Maybe it's a salary thing, or maybe it's because Garrett doesn't want to get traded. I don't know if he has a no trade clause or not. But if I'm the Browns, I'm definitely trying to offload him.
You don't reckon they're a lot closer to at least being a lot better considering how they went last year?
Well, I think the potential's there. Yeah, I just don't think it's going to happen. So, I mean, I get it in the stint.
Oh yeah, not for this year, and not for next year with Watson.
Exactly, with his. But then you're looking at, okay, is Garrett going to be at the top of his game? What kind of price is he going to command in 3 years? So that's why I'm a little bit kind of like the Patriots way in terms of, sell them when guys are high.
Absolutely. All right, another guy. The Saints have sent Marshawn Lattimore to the Commanders, the cornerback who was drafted by the Saints in 2017, has played his whole career there, has had a pretty damn good career actually at the Saints as well. A lot of great years, a lot of tackles, a lot of interceptions, and he's been pretty good for them as he's getting on. He's only 28. They've sent him to the Commanders. The Commanders also get a 2025 fifth round pick in terms of a swap there. The Saints get back 2025 picks in the third, fourth, and sixth rounds. So 3 picks for next year. The Saints seem to be, after the Dennis Allen firing, it looks like they're going to start clearing the decks and maybe finally start getting into that rebuild year.
Yeah. I love this, to be honest with you, for both. This is probably my favorite trade, just in terms of, I feel like, for upside for both teams. I feel like with Washington, they just, why not take the risk? You get the guy for 2 years. You got a rookie contract quarterback who's turning into an absolute stud. You're getting a number 1 corner, and you're not having to give away the farm. So, you're looking at potential injury. He has had some injury issues, but I think it's an awesome pick. And the Saints, they're clearing, like I said, they're just making cap space, and they're probably just going to be pressing reset. The one thing, I don't want to dive into Saints here, but I was just say I don't understand why they re-signed their running back. I just don't get that.
Kamara, is that who you're talking about? Yeah. The Kamara re-signing was more about a legacy thing. I think it's probably Alvin just wanting to be there and wanting to end his career where he knows and he's loved, basically. So,
and he'll go down as a legend there. He'll probably be retired in the Ring of Honor or whatever.
Yeah. I don't think probably. I think it might be a pretty sure thing, Brad. To be honest.
Yeah.
So I think that's all it will be. Whether
overreaction.
That's a drop. Whether or not like he wants to be part of a rebuild. Who knows? But that's his option now, I guess. He is signed through 2026 as well, so for another couple of years. He's got a void year in there as well, technically. So there are void years at the back end. They'll probably rework that if he doesn't want to be part of it and move it on. But he's there for not much as well. So, but I think that is. Look, I agree with you, Brad. Upside for both. The Commanders are seriously lacking in depth across the whole defensive side, and especially in their DB rooms. So that's a great pickup. A guy with a lot of experience. He can help out a lot of those younger guys that are there. And the Saints get 3 really, really good picks. Well, especially third and a fourth. You get a third and a fourth from the Saints, who we already know are going to be down the bottom of the league. So those picks are going to be high third and fourth rounders. Like that's a pretty good deal.
And
if you really want to, you could start packaging picks if you've got enough of them and move further up in a first or a second. Like it's
it's just about to say if they move up for someone like if it does, if that's how the cookie crumbles, so to speak, where they got to move up and maybe get a quarterback or something like that to maybe replace Derek Carr. I don't think he's going to last very long there.
No, I don't think so either.
So it depends on what they really want to do. Depends on what they really want to do in terms of where they think that they're at. It probably is the right decision if they started to offload guys. I think I heard earlier in the season that they might have been looking at dealing even Olave, but it never came obviously about in the end. So it's weird.
I reckon the Olave injuries sort of probably put an end to that.
It probably did. But I got a feeling that if the Chiefs sort of came knocking, they'd probably pay a premium for him or anyone like that, the Bills or something.
I don't think getting concussed this week would have helped. The week when you would have gotten traded, I don't think getting a concussion would have helped at all.
Yeah.
So, and they may not have wanted to give him away for nothing, basically, because they might, if he's okay the rest of the season, they might be able to send him for something more than that at the end of the season. To be honest. So, all right, we got a couple more. I might chuck some tunes on and let's whip through them a little bit quicker. Hey, we'll just Khalil Davis to the 49ers. Texans get a 2026 7th round pick. Bit of depth, Nick. Tre'Davious White to the Ravens. Rams swap 2027 7th rounds for a 2026 7th round. A bit of a pick swap there, 1 year to the next for Tre'Davious White. Khalil Herbert, running back to the Bengals from the Bears. Bears get a 2025 7th round pick in return for that. And it's a pretty good little bit of depth for the Bengals, or he may even just jump straight in, really, because they've been a bit woeful at running back. And then the controversial one from the week, and I know everyone's waiting to hear about it. Jonathan Mingo from the Panthers to the Cowboys, and the Panthers get for the second-year rookie a 2025 4th round and also send over a 2025 7th round back to the Cowboys. Jerry doing some wheeling and dealing, Brad, for a young guy.
All in, baby. All in. If this is not the definition of all in, I don't know what is. So, yeah. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it. You really moved the needle there.
Brad, I might try and... Maybe I'll try and, cheer you up a little bit about it. I had some thoughts about this, and everyone ripping on the Cowboys, obviously, because the optics on a 4th rounder for a second-year rookie who's only had one reception, one target, one reception over the whole year, is very, very bad. Obviously,
and how many touchdowns has he had in his career?
Yeah, exactly.
None.
So, optics on that, obviously, when we've seen other guys like D-Hop move to the Chiefs for a 5th, right? It's crazy, but you're getting the Cowboys. You would have to assume that the Cowboys were in on this guy during the 2023 draft. It's just that the Panthers were stupid enough to pick him up in the early 2nd round, because that's what he was picked. He was the 8th pick in the second round. Like that's just Panthers being dumbasses more than anything. The kid is good. I contacted today our main man at AGN, the guy who looks into all of the draft stuff and the college guys, especially the guys coming out of college, the rookies, Mark from No Huddle Dynasty. And I asked Mark, did he have anything on him? Because I had a thought about it. Like they must have been in on him. They must have seen something that year. So what did Mark see that they might have seen in on him? And Mark tells me that back then he had a lot of strength in terms of his size. So he's pretty imposing size, muscular build. Gets to his footwork was pretty good. Gets his top speed pretty quickly. Continues to play at that speed. Routes and run with attention to detail. Works back aggressively to the throw. Brad, these are all great things for a slot receiver, essentially. And it seems like they maybe saw in this guy what they thought Brandon Cooks could be. And picking that guy up for a 4th rounder on a rookie contract, so he's got another 2 years because he was a 2nd rounder.
Yep.
That's right, isn't
Yep.
it? Yep. So they've got another 2 years on a rookie contract. Considering the buy-in for wide receivers starts at around 35 mil these days outside of rookie contracts, I feel like that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and it's easy for me to bag on it. That's low hanging fruit, but the reality is I don't mind the trade because of just all the things that you said, and you're taking a flyer, you're taking a calculated gamble on a guy that you were high for a 4th round pick. Would I do that in the draft? Absolutely, I would. So for that very reason, and I think you're exactly right. I think he went too high as a 2nd rounder, but as a 4th rounder, and you got him for 2 years. You're not just renting him for this year. So, and the Cowboys, I like Will McClay. He is to me a really good draft scout, and the Cowboys have done a decent job, not great, but a decent job at developing wide receivers. So I'm okay with it, but it doesn't help you this year. It's not like he's going to come in and all of a sudden be this amazing number 2. Could he develop into that? Yeah, absolutely he could, and I hope he does. But it doesn't move the needle this year, especially with Dak gone. With Dak, and we'll talk more about that later. But
no, and I have a feeling maybe there might be a little bit of an injury to CeeDee Lamb. I mentioned that on Tuesday's show as well, on the reactions one. It looked like he had a bit of a shoulder injury coming out of that. If that happens, like if you got an injury to CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks is already out on injury. You're already lacking at wide receiver depth. And if the season's gone, then at least you can chuck the kid in and give him some reps. And it's not his fault that he gets drafted to the Panthers.
Yeah.
When they're already in a shit show, he got drafted to a franchise that was a shit show and continued to be a shit show. The Panthers stupidly deal this kid. Like when you talk about it from the Panthers side, why are you dealing this kid, a kid that you picked up in rookies, when you're clearly in some kind of rebuild and you're trying to build around a rookie quarterback as well, or a 2nd-year quarterback in Bryce Young, and you've got to build something around him. Why are you dealing a 2nd-year rookie wide receiver with some potential instead of dealing the older wide receivers like Adam Thielen, who you don't really need on that roster? You're not going to go.
Though.
Yeah, I know, but why are you not moving those on? I just don't understand the idea of moving the young guy who you could build around versus.
My hunch is it's a locker room thing. It's probably a Canales thing, the coach, because if the coach says no, he's a good dude, hardworking, great locker room guy, I don't think he gets traded. So it makes me think, okay, there might be a little bit more going on there, and maybe everybody's just saying, okay, change of scenery might do it good for him.
It is David Tepper too. I mean, there is
true.
A good thought that he could be insane.
Yeah, so. And Jerry is just notorious for bringing guys in for 2nd, 3rd, 4th chances. So,
but they've had a pretty good strike rate with that too, though. Unbelievably, is bringing guys in on these 2nd and 3rd chances and actually getting a little bit of something out of them.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I mean, you got to put up with the headaches, but Jerry doesn't mind it because it creates a little bit of drama. And what does drama do? It brings eyeballs, and eyeballs make money.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Everything comes back to the Cowboys and Jerry's wallet.
That's
That's
it.
all.
That's
All
it.
right. That's trade deadline recap for 2024. And of course, we move on past that. As I said, the second half of the year, week 10, we've got 4 games to preview for pretty decent matchups from this week. The pickings will unfortunately get slimmer as we go through the year, considering the records of some of these teams. And I feel like we need to have a show, boys, at some point in the next couple of weeks where we might send a few of these teams we don't really want to talk about off into the ether. Just punt them, I don't know, into outer space so that we never have to talk about them again. Because as I said, again, with Isaac on the reaction show the other day, there are 7 teams now on 2 wins. And I don't know whether we need to keep talking about those teams between now and the end of the regular season, if not into the playoffs. We really don't need to talk about them until we get to the off season and they're high draft picks again. So maybe we might have to have a think about that over the next couple of weeks. We might have to have a talk about who we can punt on this year. Let's call it that. That seems like a good term. Let's call it that. But for now, week 10 games. I'm waffling too much. I do this. 4 pretty decent matchups. Let's go first up to 49ers at Buccaneers. The San Francisco 49ers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers are set to face off in a crucial Week 10 matchup. The 49ers are coming off their bye, and despite being able to score points, have been very up and down in the win-loss column this season, struggling to find any consistency to win those matches. The Bucs come off a very close, hard-fought loss to the Chiefs in Week 9, taking KC all the way to overtime, where the Chiefs just feel inevitable once they get there. Both teams enter this game with 4 wins and are currently positioned in second place within their divisions and are firmly in the must-win territory this game. Brad, the Bucs have been the closest team this season to breaking the Chiefs' dominance, but a lack of killer instinct from Todd Bowles once again saw them fall all at the final hurdle. Can they find a few more onions against the 49ers to push themselves back to 500 and keep in the playoff race?
oh man, what can Baker do? That's ultimately what it comes down to. The Bucks,
When I
they're
woke
looking
up
like
this morning, I was
world
feeling pretty
beaters.
dangerous.
That first month of the season, they win 3 of their first 4. They beat the Commanders, the Lions, the Eagles. They're just riding high. Everybody's thinking this is amazing, and then all of a sudden just injury, and we've lost now the last 4 out of 5. So it's unreal the way Baker has been playing, and in order for them to keep it up, he's going to have to even take it up to another level, and I don't know if that's possible. He played really well. I felt like this last game against the Chiefs, and he by and large he protected the ball. I don't know why Todd Bowles went for overtime. Personally, I just say go for the win at the end. Go for 2. Go for the win. You're giving the ball to Patrick Mahomes. To me, that's just silly. So
Yeah, I don't know why either. When they got that touchdown, 24 seconds to go, I feel like you go 2 points there. If you miss the 2 points, you lose the game. No one's going to hang it on you. Everyone's going to understand what you were trying to do. Everyone's going to say you were trying to beat the Chiefs. And then you get 2 if you get it. You give Mahomes back the ball with 24 seconds in some pretty atrocious conditions.
Yeah.
And he's got to be able to make that play in quick time without the benefit of that short break between regular time and overtime as well. So, and they had 2 timeouts as well. So the Chiefs might have gone down and scored again. But at that point, you could at least say Todd Bowles tried everything he possibly could to win that game. But I just don't know whether you could at this point. As I said, it feels inevitable. If you match the Chiefs and you get to overtime, it feels like the football gods are just going to go, Chiefs get the ball. Patrick Mahomes gets to drive down the field for 7 minutes and score a touchdown. It's just what it is.
I'd much rather have Baker for a one play showdown. Everything's on the line. One play. I'll take Baker doing that over Tampa Bay, getting a stop and being able to generate a drive to win the game in overtime. That just, to me, that was just very, very poor coaching decision.
Can I make a case for the flip side?
Yeah,
of course
please do.
Of course, the 49ers
I'll make a
can.
case. No, I'll make a case for the flip side for the Bucks, right? So
Yeah.
they're without their two best red zone threats, which Evans and Godwin. So it becomes a lot harder to be able to execute the play. I feel, they kicked the extra point, which they did. Had they have gotten the ball, it's a different story, because then at least if the Chiefs still win from that scenario, it's something where they go, well, they couldn't convert, as opposed to, the Chiefs getting the ball and that's it. So at least you can say, well, either way, it's a case of the Bucks not converting anyway. Whereas I feel them being able to have the ball to be able to go down the field, which they did quite well on that final drive, and they had momentum with it, could have been something that would have worked. But I feel without their red zone threats, I feel like if Godwin and Evans were both there, they probably would have gone, yep, let's do it. But I feel on the flip side, in the wet, it was probably the right thing to do. It was probably the right thing to do. Because even though, you've got, even in the case of the Chiefs, now, again, because this is Mahomes we're talking about, and it's a different level parallel quarterback, in a normal circumstance, even against very good quarterbacks in this league, like if it was Burrow or Lamar or Josh Allen or anything like that, you give them the ball in those sorts of conditions and you force them to score a touchdown, they're most likely probably not going to be able to do that. But again, we're talking about Mahomes, so it's just the way that they had the ball because they won the toss and then went from there. It's a shitty rule in a way, but I feel at the end of the day they played it. Playing it safe was probably the right thing to do, only because it gives them sort of another chance to be able to finish it off on their own terms and be able to actually nail it without giving the Chiefs another chance. Because had they have gone for the two, the Chiefs, like Ian said, they still could have scored. So you don't know in that case. It would have been difficult, but it still could have been done either way.
The only problem I have with that scenario, though, Nick, is that they still gave him back the ball after the extra point. And on that play, the Tampa Bay defense pressured KC very hard, and Mahomes went with incomplete passes on, first, second, and third, and they ended up having to punt the ball. So that's kind of like you're not backing your offense, but you're backing your defense kind of thing. And I think if they would have went the two and then just played it that way, there's still a very real possibility that they restrict Mahomes to that point where he can't move, or they have to go for it on fourth down, or they get another sack because they got a couple of those. Anyway, speaking of this game, 49ers Bucks, I guess the question was, do the Bucks have the onions to be a bit more brave against the 49ers? Because they really need to be, Nick, because their seasons are both sort of right on the precipice here in a way.
No, for sure. And, injuries have hit them at a really bad time because, they're in a patch where they're really behind in their division now because Atlanta's sort of gone a few games ahead, plus they've got both games on them now. So it's a really bad spot for them to be in. It's sort of a must-win scenario because, now you think of if the division win is, it's sort of not a distant memory, but it's sort of it's not something that's going to be probable. Then it comes down to wildcard spots, and this could be a game where head-to-head could matter. So I think the reason that I think the line is much bigger is because McCaffrey is off the IR now. Obviously, there was a couple of, I think Hufanga could be a chance. I know Greenlaw is training, but probably won't play. So there's just a lot of probables or like maybes that could happen, and that's probably why the line is so big. And I think most of it comes down to, we're a far better team in the red zone. with McCaffrey, and we haven't been all year.
Mm.
A very good team. So I think that's probably what it's going to come down to, is that if he plays, that's probably going to be the difference.
So what? So what's your bet on this? At the end of the day,
I will go off a bye. No, off a bye. I will. I do have to favour the offensive coach off a bye. It's there's a reason why most of them are quite good with it. So I'm going to lay the point. Sorry, at 5.5, and take the Niners with it. I think the week off with some guys that could potentially be coming back, it's really going to help them.
yeah. I would say the exact same thing personally, and with the Bucks on a short week as well. So yeah, I just think it's
Yeah.
just I don't think it's a sell your car bet, but it's still it's I'd sell my bike.
Sell your bike, okay.
He's talking about push bike. Say your scooter.
Still,
Yeah.
even
I really love the over under total in this at 50.5. I actually think it could be up around that. I think we got some pretty good scoring potential here with both of these teams.
I'd go the over. I would go the over.
I'll go over that.
Even with the Bucks out, I know we was talking about it before, but Ward isn't playing for us, so our secondary is even weaker than what it has been this season. So the Bucks are still going to be able to pass the ball.
Yeah, I say I wouldn't. I personally I wouldn't, but I am the fun police, so I prefer the under.
You'll hear from me later on the fun times with this game.
All right.
But yeah, look, you know what? I'd be leaning Bucks at this point. But that's just me.
You're a Baker lover.
I'm almost a Bucks fan at this point, Brad.
Yeah, right.
If it doesn't work with the Vikings, if the Vikings start to slip further, then the Bucks will take over.
Do you notice how they're very similar teams?
Yeah. You definitely have a type.
Yeah, I have a type. This is my blonde hair and blue eyes. Vikings and Pirates, mate. That's where I'm at. You can't get any more metal. All right, Steelers at Commanders. The Pittsburgh Steelers head to Maryland this week to take on the Washington Commanders, a team who have emerged as a formidable force this season. Both teams have made moves at the trade deadline, as we talked about just a little earlier, bolstering both sides of the ball. The Steelers sit a breath ahead of Baltimore at the top of the AFC North, coming off their bye. They'll look to build on a 3-game win streak. The Commanders sit a game ahead in the NFC East and are looking to build on their own 3-game win streak, the last two being thrilling end-of-game wins. Nick, this one's for you. The Commanders return to the site of the Maryland Miracle from Week 8. After 2 close wins, they now come up against one of the masters of close game football, Mike Tomlin. Will they continue the grind or finally break them? Will the continued grind finally break them is probably a better way to phrase that.
Yeah, they've sort of been getting by, haven't they? So just collecting the wins, but I suppose it is a sign of a good team. And this is the case in all sports where you have a patch where you're just struggling, and you can't get much going. Maybe it's, the offense isn't clicking or the defense just, can't get stops, and you just find ways to win. It's just, it can be a sign of a really good team because, stuff goes wrong and then you can still pull through. That being said, they had played, the Giants is a divisional opponent, so, take of that what you will. Then the Bears in a Hail Mary. So I feel like the pressure for me has to be on the Steelers. Even though the Commanders are 7-2, they're top of their division. I feel like they're still playing with house money, considering where everyone did have them at the start of the year. Like, no one had them leading their division halfway through the year. So they are 100% playing with house money. And, that they have the power to be able to win that division anyway because they're still going to play Philadelphia twice. Pittsburgh, I feel like it's a bit of, trying to get away from Baltimore, who were very much coming after that top spot. I think there's only half a game, or there's a game that separates them, or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's they're 6-2, whilst the Ravens are 6-3.
Yeah, so it's a big week. It's a big week for the Steelers because we've mentioned it a few times on the show. Their run home is ridiculously hard. So these 50-50 games, they're sort of going to have to pull through. Washington's run home is going to be a lot easier, so they'll be able to pick up games along the way. But this is definitely a game where Russ has got to show up. We do think at some point there's probably going to be a bubble that may burst with Russell Wilson in terms of what he can do, considering his age and his form the last few years. But that defense for Pittsburgh is huge, and I think with the line at +3 for the Steelers, it's quite good, even though they're on the road. I think it's quite good. I would be taking that because I think this is probably a defense where, Jaden Daniels hasn't seen a quality of defense that is the Steelers yet. So it's going to be a real test for him as well.
Yeah, I have to agree, mate. TJ Watt has 6.5 sacks so far this season too, and I can imagine that he'll be coming after Daniels. There'll be a lot of pressure going on there, so that's going to be very, very interesting. And that Steelers Ravens matchup is actually next week. That's the week after this. So you've got to imagine that the Steelers are going to want to have a pretty good showing here and a bit of a test, but not do it too hard, and come away with something positive so that they can go into the next week in that very important matchup against the Ravens in the best way possible.
Yeah. And I think it's mostly going to come down to, I think, Pittsburgh's offense against Washington's defense. It's probably the weaker sides of both teams. So it's going to be interesting to see who wins that battle. I think it's going to be a case where the Steelers are probably going to be able to open them up a lot more coming off the bye, so they'll be rested. Whereas, as we said before, the Commanders have sort of had some grueling wins. So that's where I think the Steelers are going to have the edge as well. More energy around the ball as well defensively.
Brad, let's go Fun Police. 45.5 on under over. You know what? I'm going with Brad and the Fun Police on this one. I actually think this will be closer and very low scoring.
I think it's definitely closer, and I'm actually taking Pittsburgh on this, and I personally I would be selling my compact car on this one, to be honest with you. So I'm not gonna sell the main car, but I'll sell my kid's car. So how's that?
Brad,
Jeez. I don't know about going that far. I would have maybe sold this book, but I don't know about the car.
No, it's still
Sold
he believes
the
heavily.
book? What? Oh yeah, you gotta believe. And if I don't win, just double down on the next one. No, sorry.
What?
Don't.
Come on, mate. He's there. He's going to do something. No, I'm banking on unders. I think Dangerous. He'll be a factor in this game, but I hope he's a positive factor and not a negative factor, to be honest. And
Mr. Unlimited.
Oh, my bet limit on this would be unlimited. Sorry.
Oh, that's 2 for 2 for drops, Brad. Thank you.
No worries.
All right, we better move on before it descends into chaos. And speaking of chaos, Eagles at Cowboys. The Philadelphia Eagles head to Dallas for what should have been one of the division-defining matches in the NFC East. But football is a strange, strange beast, Brad, and the Commanders had other plans. The Eagles enter this matchup at 6-2 on a 4-game win streak, and some strong criticism from their fan base due to the quality of those 4 wins. The Cowboys come off a disappointing away trip to Atlanta where they looked largely dysfunctional and undisciplined. And at 3-5, can't afford another loss if Jerry plans on resurrecting this season. Brad, we know that Dak's hamstring injury looks to be more serious than week to week that the team are trying to dupe the league into thinking. So at 3-5, the $1 million question is Cooper Rush or Trey Lance?
Oh, I think here's the deal. I think on that, I think to play it smart, you let Cooper do a couple games. You let him. So your Dak's going to be out at least 4 games. Personally, I'd keep him out the rest of the year. Get a better draft spot and develop your young guys and just say, okay, we're going to reset. I would play Cooper for a couple games and then get Trey in there. There's a reason they're not putting Trey in because he hasn't beaten out Cooper Rush. So and Cooper's a good backup. So it's not as if they're throwing out Skylar Thompson or whatever. So it's Cooper Rush is a legitimate NFL backup. They went 4-1 with them, I think, or 4-2 with them last time Dak got hurt. So I have no problems with Cooper, but I think eventually you got to give it to Trey to try and develop some trade capital potentially. So otherwise, you're just letting him go, and you gave up a 4th rounder for what? I
think that's exactly why they should.
But Jerry wouldn't mind that.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think that's exactly why you would play him from this week onwards, Trey Lance, because I feel it's a win-win situation either way, whether he's good or bad. So if he's bad, then you can come along and you can say, well, we'll end up with a better draft pick. So, we'll end up in a good spot. We'll get someone. And then we know at least Trey Lance is done. We can cut ties. If he's good, and you come along and you can say, well, if you've won games, then you can say, well, there's a wild card spot still alive, so when Dak's ready, you can come back. Or you can come along and you can trade Trey Lance and maybe get something for capital, like you said. I feel like going with Cooper Rush, unless you're going to win all of the next, 4 games that Dak's out for, it sort of doesn't make sense because you wouldn't be moving him and you wouldn't, there wouldn't be a case where someone's going to come heavily knocking for him or something like that. So I feel like with Lance, you have a win-win situation either way. You sort of know then definitively either he's going to be good enough to move on or, if he's going to continue with his bad stretch, you just end up with a better pick. You just write off the season and you get some guys in that can help you next year.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think from Mike McCarthy's viewpoint, and that's what I'm trying to put myself in a little bit, is we all know he's going to get fired, but he's trying to save his job. And so he's trying to put the best quarterback out there. And I think it's probably pretty clear that at this point, it's Cooper Rush who is the better quarterback. I mean, that's why he hasn't beaten him out. They gave him every shot, every chance to beat him out, and he just in that preseason he looked pedestrian.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I agree with both sides in a way. Like, I understand what Nick's saying, and I really understand that part. And it's the most logical course of action is that you throw Trey Lance in there, knowing that Cooper Rush can be better or can at least save something out of a game. So you can throw Trey Lance in there. If he absolutely bombs, well, he's still going to absolutely bomb, and we can out the door, dude. We've just wasted a 4th round pick, and that's about it. So see you later. But you've still got Cooper Rush, and but by the other token, Brad's side, you have to start thinking like Mike McCarthy's not going to want to keep losing because he knows it's his job. So it's a hard situation to be in. If Mike McCarthy really doesn't want to keep losing, though, the best course of action is probably to go out there and try and find another quarterback, be honest, and one of these other guys that are a bit more experienced, and bring them in at some point, because the way it's looking with Dak at the moment is they're talking about like a hamstring avulsion where it's torn completely off the bone, and usually that's like 4 to 6 weeks minimum. You know,
So who?
Yeah, yeah, and Jerry has a habit of downplaying injuries. I mean, you see it with Micah Parsons. When he went down, they were saying, "Oh, he'll be out for a couple weeks," and here we are, what, 4 or 5 weeks later, and he still hasn't played. So, yeah, odds are Dak is
yep.
at
Who would you
least
get? Who would
6
you go and
weeks.
get? There's someone that's a bit more seasoned.
Ryan Tannehill,
maybe.
Tannehill. That'd be my number one.
Fitzpatrick or-
I don't think Fitzmagic's coming back. As much as he'd probably like to add another jersey to his collection.
Yeah. I do
would love
I do like
that.
him on the
I would
Thursday
love
night
that.
coverage, but yeah, it would be. Imagine that storyline with the Cowboys. That'd be funny.
No, but Tannehill, I
That
think,
would be
is the
awesome.
most logical person that's out there right now, who's waiting for a more of a starting quarterback role to come in and be a saviour. Show that he's still got it, but you never know. All right, this game against the Eagles, it is. Let's just touch on it quickly. Obviously, it's pretty important for both. The Eagles are under some heavy criticism from their own fan base because of the way Sirianni is playing and leading that team. He clearly doesn't like points, or he hates his kicker. That's the only probable thing that's going on with the kicker right now, because he won't even take extra points. He just keeps trying to go for 2 constantly. So there's something going on there, and he's obviously rubbing the fan base wrong in Philly, who are a very, very passionate fan base, as we all know. So they've really got to show that they can win properly, I think, and that's where it's on the line for them. Cowboys just need a win, because if you have a loss here, you go to 3-6. She's done. She is done. It's cooked, well and truly, and we're going to punt you to the moon after that one. So the Eagles are favoured by 7.5 points right now. Huge.
It is, and that's almost a little too much. I think Cooper's very efficient, and the Cowboys seem to rally in these types of situations. I've seen it happen too many times. I don't think they're going to win, but I would take the Cowboys in 7.5 points on this.
Yeah, this was actually a very hard game to pick, because the thinking is when Cooper Rush had played and started against the Eagles that little while ago, I think he actually beat them, and that was in Philly. Was that right? Yeah, in Philly.
Yeah.
So that was
Yep.
one thinking. The other thinking is, they've got Saquon Barkley and versus the Cowboys run defense, so
Yeah.
pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
So that was the other
yeah,
thinking,
you're
but,
right. You're right.
Oh, that's a Surrey car bet for this week, by the way.
what?
Safe one.
Yeah, anytime
over
score.
rushing yards, even if it's 250, put the I reckon that there's probably a chance of of a backdoor cover with this. So the 7.5 in Dallas. If it was in Philly, I'd probably go with Philly, but in Dallas, the Eagles, last week they should have cleaned that game up, but there was a chance for the Jags to win it. So that shouldn't have happened. So I think probably a backdoor cover. I think Eagles to win, but the Cowboys to cover.
Just having a quick look to see what the Saquon lines are like early in the week right now too, actually. In this crazy time to match up. Can't find them quick.
They're out yet. Yeah.
No, they're not really. Not even BetMGM have got anything out yet. So, but they will be. I imagine that rush line is going to be 90.
It'll be
And I'd
big.
almost
It'll
still
be
hit it,
really
to be
big.
honest. And I may even come up that way. So we'll see how we go. All right.
It'll be huge, as my president says. Oh, absolutely. A big fat no. Sorry.
There you go. All right, let's move on. The last of the games for this week that we're going to preview. Lions at Texans. The Kansas City Chiefs might be inevitable, but the Detroit Lions are the force in the NFL, smashing through teams over the last 6 weeks, piling points on good and bad teams, and winning on all three phases of the ball. They are the form team of the NFL. The Texans were hyped to build upon a strong CJ Stroud rookie season and be one of the top teams in the NFC this season, but they've looked out of sorts despite a 6-3 record. Nick, the Lions are only favoured by 3.5 points despite showing their ability to overcome anything this season. Have the Texans got the answers to Dan Campbell's magic, or do the Lions already have the answers and nobody has been able to figure out the questions yet?
I think it's more so because it is in Houston, and because Houston's coming off a much longer break. Because remember, they did play the Thursday night game the week before, so they're actually coming off quite a very long break. I think 10 or 11 days, because I think this is the Sunday night matchup. Yeah, it's a Sunday night matchup, so it is quite a long break going into their home game.
Yeah.
And we saw last week they struggled massively. I definitely underestimated how much of their receiving core is without even Collins and Diggs. So they were, it's glaringly obvious last week, even against the good secondary with the Jets. They missed those two guys very much. So
Yeah.
the Lions,
As much as Tank proves that tanks do have hands, yeah.
there's not really much you could say about the Lions. There's really, I feel like they've been very, very high. So I feel like there's a game where they're probably going to pull back just a bit. I don't think it's going to be this one though. I think because the Texans won't be able to sort of keep up scoring wise. I mean, not many teams can with the Lions this year, but I don't think they're going to be able to get key stops. I think the Lions are just going to be able to do whatever they please. So 3.5, I'd probably be taking that in this spot, even though the Texans come with a bit of a extra rest. I'd still be taking the 3.5.
Yeah, I just think the Lions they're playing too good right now. They are just humming on every cylinder. It's interesting. The Lions are 8-0 against the spread on primetime games with Dan Campbell. So, and they're 7-1 against the spread this season. Meanwhile, the Texans are 1-6 against the spread. I think so. I think everything is just kind of lining up for the Lions. The scheduling thing, I get that. I get what you're saying. But I just think the Lions are too complete. The Texans' offensive line woes are really, really holding them back. The problem's not CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud is playing well. He just has no time to throw the ball, and getting Collins back could be a huge thing, but I don't see it. And I'll throw you out my consolation. We haven't gone through our bets yet, but and this is not one of mine, but I love Amon-Ra St. Brown anytime touchdown score with this, because the Texans have allowed the most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers this season. So that's just a little bonus tidbit for you right there.
They certainly have great stats, Brad. Well done. Not much to say about this game, really. It sums it up and everything there as well. And I can guarantee you that Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to feature in my best bets. So that's all right.
There you go.
I don't mind.
Sorry.
You can force it out. I've been trying to figure out whereabouts it'll fit. But let's move on to that aforementioned segment. Hey? Let's do it.
We're having a blunt, having a slap, just having some fun, and then making some scratch. It's the Gday Gridiron's bloody best bets.
All right, bloody best bets for week 10. Week 9, we didn't do too bad again. We did better in our off-mic bets than we did on our on-mic bets, but it wasn't too bad. I just missed out on my Baker line. I have consulted with the boys on whether or not I take that Baker line again, maybe I don't. The Bucks were amazing to cover. I mean, that blew out. By the time I put that bet on, that blew out to plus 9.5, and that was probably one of the easiest bets I've ever put on in my life. And of course, it came home well and truly. So, who wants to go first, boys? Who's first cab off the rank? Who feels like they've got some pretty solid stuff to talk about?
Well, I'm happy to go first on this one. So I've got between the Bengals Ravens game, the Bengals are getting +7, and if you look at this historically, they always play the Ravens really tough, and it's always close games. And Joe Burrow is just playing lights out right now. The team is struggling, but there is just something about this matchup where they always it's a very competitive game. So I'm taking the Bengals at +7. I think the Ravens will win, but I love that spread. So Bengals at +7 for me. The next one I've got is burn my eyes out if I had to watch this game. The Giants versus the Panthers in Germany. Um, just goodness me, I'd rather smell a wet fart than have to listen
Bryce
to
Young
watch
v.
this game.
Daniel Jones.
So it's
Um,
yeah, it's not good. So, and personally, I think it's going to be really low scoring. We talked about this in the green room a little bit before the game, before that we started recording, and it's a low under. The under's 42, but guess what? The fun police is here, and I'm taking the under. So, yeah, give me Giants Panthers on the under for 42. And my last one is the Steelers. I've already talked about it, but the Steelers are getting 2.5 points. I think they're going to win that game. So give me the Steelers with 2.5 points.
Brad, I want to just before we get to Nick's picks. You mentioned some of those
Yeah.
lines in there. Some of these are ridiculous for this week. We were going through it a little bit earlier, going through the various lines for games. There are some big onions hanging in a couple of these games this week. Like you said, Giants at -6. We've talked about it. 49ers at -5.5 against the Bucks. The Bears are currently at -6 against the Patriots. The Chiefs are -8 against the Broncos, and I know the Broncos haven't been spectacular, but the Chiefs haven't really been scoring high amounts of points in games either. There's a lot going on this week with some big spreads. It's a bet man's paradise, I feel like.
You know, you and me both. So I could not agree with you more, and makes me go, you know, what's going on here? Do they know something that we don't know? So I'd be curious, Nick, what's your thoughts on it? Because Ian and I both think that the lines
I
are
want to
kind of
know
weird.
where you found the Bengals +7 at, because the whole week I've seen it. It's like at 5. I want to know where you got it at 7. Because like
okay,
+7,
yeah, right,
that's really
right,
good.
okay.
That's really good. I probably would have gone. I would have gone for that.
It
as well.
is.
There's a few.
Yeah.
There's a few even as not bigger favourites, but some lines that are really good. Like I feel like the Bears, even at -6, I feel like they're due for a good week. They're only playing the Patriots. You know, another one they'll talk about in just a sec. Even some shorter lines. So even like I feel like the Saints on a week where they had the head coach fired. Usually, when that does happen, there's some weird stuff that does happen in between with that as well.
Oh,
so
yeah,
usually they could be up and about for that. So 3.5 in a divisional game, yeah, and in a divisional game at home, could be a game that the Falcons maybe sort of overlook, or they're not sure what they're going to get out of that. So there are some weird ones, very weird ones this week. Absolutely.
My So you asked where I got it from. I got it from my American.
Can certainly Sportsbet
betting site.
currently have them
So
at plus 5.5. You can
Take
go.
the 7.
okay,
You,
yeah. See, 5.5
you can go
is a lot different
alternate
than
handicaps
7.
though, and like Ben, I've done that in the past. Whenever you've said plus 7, and it moves, we can still put those lines on anyway because you've got alternate handicaps available to us in Australia. If you go Bengals at plus 7.5, it's currently $1.64. So
That's all right.
$1.81
Take
for
it.
plus 6.5. Like
that's-
it's pretty good.
Yeah,
Well, we use
I like
halves
7,
here.
but yeah,
I don't like
yeah.
round numbers for some reason. Probably
I think it's to
because
avoid the draw.
I think
Yeah,
it's
I
to
know, it's
avoid the
crazy.
draw as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was
But
trying to get at.
there is because there is a separate market where you can go the actual even number, but it gives another line where it's the draw line as well. So, like if it's -7, then they would actually have an option to pick the favourite to win by exactly 7 points. And then they'd have the favourite plus 7, but you actually have to have 8 or more, which is weird. I don't know why they have two separate markets like that.
Okay.
But I think that's more so if you know that if you think the favourite's going to win by that exact margin, that's probably the only time you'd probably use it, I suppose.
Yep.
But yeah, some weird sort of. It's been like that the last few weeks. I feel like because we're in a spot where we're getting to the midway of the season, we haven't quite got that separation of that sort of mid block of teams where you're not quite sure, are they really good? Are they going to pull back? That's the sort of teams where you sort of don't know. I think that's where you can sort of pick out those lines, I reckon.
Right, Nick, how's Nick's picks for this week?
All right, we need a better week. 1 and 2 last week. It's no good. No good. I'll tell you what. The Jets again. They keep scoring me. It was first the Cowboys. Now it's the Jets. So 2 teams I'm not going to look at anymore for the rest of the year. Anyway, one thing I did like, it was one of them that you had mentioned before, Ian, is actually Denver plus 8.5 at Kansas City. It is a bit strange the last few years going against Kansas City against the spread, but I feel like it's a big margin. I think out of their last 5 out of 7 meetings, Denver has only won 1 of them, but all of the margins out of those 5 games have been less than a touchdown. So it's not like they've been blown out most of the time. They have kept it quite close, and as I mentioned, the last matchup, even though it was in Denver, they had actually won it. But 8.5 seems quite big. Denver, offensively, I think will be better this week. Sean Payton against a defense that he's seen before. I think it's probably something where it could be a bit of value. I think Kansas City will win, but Denver to cover should be something that would work. The other one, this is probably the one I'm most confident with, is the Rams. Well, it started at -1.5, and then as soon as we started, it was half a point. So pretty much you could take them straight up, I think, just with that. At home, you get the better quarterback, you get the better coach. You probably get the better offensive line as well. Defensively, you could probably call it a dead heat, even though Miami's been good in patches, and then the Rams have sort of come about the last few weeks. In LA, I'd take the Rams easily with that one. And then the last one, which will happen before this episode airs, I am going to take first player prop bet, first time in a few weeks, is I'm going to take Joe Burrow over the 36.5 passing attempts. It is going to be a game where I feel like they're going to be playing a lot of catch-up. I think Baltimore's going to lead most of the game. I've gone about checking the weather even. It's not going to be raining at all. It's going to be clear for that game, so there shouldn't be an issue with weather. So I think Baltimore's probably going to have the lead, and it could even be another high-scoring game. So I think the Bengals will be playing a lot of catch-up. And in their last meeting, I think Joe Burrow had 40 attempts. So it could definitely be something where Burrow knows how to get through this Baltimore secondary that hasn't been quite good. So this week, we're going to get back to 3-0. So another 3-0 week coming up.
All right, mine. I am going Fun Central. We're going to run it back again. I didn't get it last week. Baker only got 200 plus. He only got 200 yards exactly, actually. He got 2 TDs. I'm going to run it back, though. 250 plus and 2 TDs against the 49ers for Baker Mayfield. So we're going to run that back when that comes out. I've just been doing a couple now and looking at a few more lines. Chuba Hubbard, 65.5 over for rush yards. So we're going to hit Chuba Hubbard for that. Currently getting that right now at $1.88, which isn't too bad. And the last one,
That's pretty good.
Brad, I'd had some Amon-Ra St. Brown in there, as I said. I hadn't quite decided, so I decided while you boys were going through yours then. 80 plus passing yards and a TD. You convinced me with a TD. So that same game multi shapes out at $3.75 right now. That's pretty good. So,
I like that.
Yeah.
That's very good.
So we're going to hit that. I don't know if I'm going to go with the Baker thing just for the fun of the program, just because it's a lot of shits and giggles. Me putting Baker Mayfield bets on every week now. But I genuinely believe that he's going to have a pretty decent game against the 49ers, and they're probably going to have to throw a lot to catch up. So when he's done that in the past, they've been over 300-yard games. So 250 seems like easy money at this point.
Oh, you failed math.
Thanks, Brad.
You're welcome.
All right. That's been bloody best bets for this week. And as always, the betting information on Gday Gridiron is provided for informational and entertainment purposes only. There are no guarantees that tips we provide will provide success or profit. All sports tips provided are our opinions, and punters are encouraged to use this information in order to form their own opinion about the outcome of any sporting event. Bet at your own risk and always consider what you could lose before placing a bet. Boys, slightly longer than the hour this week, just because we had the trade deadline stuff, but we've had some pretty good chats about 4 pretty decent games that I am actually genuinely excited to watch, apart from my own team's game this week as well. So I think that's not too bad.
Yeah, no, we had a great time. Good
As
conversation,
always.
as always.
And if you haven't yet, catch the reaction show that I did earlier in the week with Isaac. That went so well, Isaac's decided he's going to come back for another hit next week, so we'll see how that shapes out. And hopefully that keeps on going. Isaac might be our reaction man from now on, and I'll have to start getting him to do some of the outrageous stuff that really churns people's butter. I created a bit of controversy amongst our own group this week, so that was a bit of fun. Now we just need to transfer it to the outer world where everyone else can blow up me for saying dumb stuff. So we'll get there. If you haven't checked out any of our socials or any of the other stuff from the Aussie Gridiron Network yet, you can do all of that at our Linktree, which is our big mothership for everything to do with AGN. Linktree/Aussie Gridiron Network. You'll find all of our social links, all of our episodes, plus the stuff from the Fantasy Boys, Manjot's Pastry Press, and the Aussie Gridiron Today stuff he is doing on YouTube. Make sure you check that out. There's been some pretty cool stuff the last couple of weeks, and I know that Manjot will have a bit of a wrap-up about the flag football tournament that he was invited to go and do some social stuff and some commentary for, which went very, very well for Manjot. Good on Manjot for doing that and for that opportunity. Amazing, amazing stuff. I've also heard that we're going to get a bit of Marky Mark and some No Huddle Dynasty back very shortly. So make sure you go and check all of that out at the Linktree and get amongst the entirety of the Aussie Gridiron Network. On behalf of myself, Nick, and Brad, thank you very much for listening to us once again. We appreciate it. We do. Greatly appreciate it. And we will see you on the other side of Week 10. See you later.
The G'day Gridiron podcast is brought to you by the Aussie Gridiron Network. a network of Australian podcasts bringing the fun and a little bit of the Aussie larrikin to the NFL and fantasy football. Check out our other amazing productions. Australia's #1 fantasy football podcast, the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show. Everything about the local game at Aussie Gridiron today. Manjot's Pastry Press on Instagram and YouTube, and Australia's very own Dynasty podcast, No Huddle Dynasty. Find links to everything at Linktree /Aussie Gridiron Network.